Enjoy your time here and find peace in the stories we tell. If you liked the story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to support the channel. It was the second day since the West pacifying army returned to the capital in triumph. The main streets were draped in red silk, bustling with the colors of celebration. The young master of the Lin family had finally returned. Years ago, he had submitted a petition to His Majesty asking for my hand in marriage. No one expected him to be gone for 3 whole years. Now that he was back, I could finally be at peace. Mother happily helped me do my hair, a smile she could not hide shining in her eyes. I hugged her arm and acted coquettishly. She smiled and patted my hand gently. Now that the young man has achieved success and fame, and is devoted to you, you must live well after you marry into his family. By the calendar, tomorrow was the day Julian Lin would welcome me into the Lin manor. Julian Lin and I grew up together. Since childhood, he has always protected me. Later, he asked for a royal decree to marry me, promising to cherish me in the palm of his hand, to treasure and love me for a lifetime, never letting me down. That year, tensions rose at the border. He told me to wait for him. Unexpectedly, 3 years later, he returned openly and honorably with the title of General of the Folding Wing. I carefully chose my wedding attire, my heart filled with joy as I awaited the day Julian would come to pick me up. But before he arrived, news of his marriage reached me first. Congratulations to the young General Lin on his great joy. Outside, drums and flags were waving, the streets bustling with excitement. My maid, Tilly, ran in holding a red envelope, her face pale. My heart suddenly sank. Beside me, Mother almost fainted. I quickly calmed myself, supported Mother, and asked for the details. You are saying that Julian is currently bowing to another woman in the wedding ceremony. And they even have a 2-year-old child. Hearing Tilly's words, a wave of fury consumed me. I immediately got on a sedan chair and went straight to the Lin manor to question him personally. The young lady of the Gu family has arrived. The servant standing at the gate hurriedly ran in to report. Before my eyes, my fiancé, dressed in wedding robes, was tenderly holding another woman. Julian held a child in his arms who looked 80% like him. Seeing me appear, his eyes froze for a moment, then he calmly asked, "Did the servants not explain it clearly to you? Today is the day of my grand wedding with Annie Xiao. I will welcome you into the manor tomorrow." My whole body trembled with anger. Will you welcome me tomorrow? Did he mean for me to be a co-wife? He replied nonchalantly. Annie Xiao has given birth to an heir for me, so the position of the first wife naturally belongs to her. After you enter the manor, you must respect her and help her raise my flesh and blood. Julian spoke as if it were a matter of course. Mother suddenly rushed forward to shield me, her voice cold. Do you mean you want my daughter to be a concubine? Do not dream of it. She took my hand and turned to leave. You dare to humiliate my daughter like this? We do not need this marriage. The entire hall suddenly fell silent, the atmosphere tense to the point of suffocation. Julian suddenly slammed the table, his anger flaring. You dare. This marriage was granted by the emperor. Do you dare to cancel it? Years ago, he knelt before His Majesty to beg for the marriage decree. Now he used it to force me, compelling me to become his concubine. Mother was so angry her face turned pale, she grit her teeth unable to speak. Although Julian was behaving treacherously, his older brother was the West pacifying general, who had been personally appointed by the emperor as the general protector of the state. If he spoke up, it was uncertain whether His Majesty would rule in my favor. Thinking we had compromised, Julian stepped forward, took my hand, and smiled faintly. Be obedient and enter the manor. I will treat it as if nothing happened. We will still be as before, isn't that good? I looked at him coldly, articulating every word. I do not have the habit of sharing a husband with others, nor do I wish to lower myself. As soon as I finished speaking, his face darkened, his tone dripping with disdain. You are nothing but a merchant's daughter. Being made a concubine is already a grace. Do not be delusional about things that do not belong to you. I clenched my fists tightly, a wave of indignation rising in my heart. My family had made a living by trading for generations. Although we were not a noble clan of high standing, we had never suffered such humiliation. By my father's generation, the family business had spread across the entire country. Before he passed away, his entire fortune was left as my dowry. With that amount of dowry, no matter who I married, I would never have to bow my head. The woman in his arms had tears in her eyes, feigning a virtuous and generous appearance as she spoke. Tomorrow, when elder sister enters the manor, I will go to the temple to cultivate myself, and never appear before her again. I only pray that the elder sister and my husband will be harmonious and happy." The child beside them also wailed loudly. "Mother, do not go. Henry cannot live without mother." Julian looked at me and shouted in anger. "Clara, how can you be so cruel? Must you force Annie to leave?" The surrounding people also reproached me in unison, their eyes looking at me as if I had committed a terrible crime. It was truly ridiculous. It was clearly Julian who betrayed me, broke his old oath to marry another, forced me to be a concubine, and even had an illegitimate child. Yet now, the one to blame has become me. Looking at the person in front of me, I no longer recognized the shadow of the young man who once swore never to let me down. My heart turned completely cold. I held Mother's hand tightly and turned to leave. Julian roared, "If you dare to step out of this place today, I will report to the Emperor and accuse you of defying the imperial decree. Does the Gu family have enough heads to be chopped off?" He was so angry his face turned red as he began to threaten me. Defying the decree. Ridiculous. That year, it was he who knelt before the Golden Hall to ask for the marriage decree. It clearly stated that the two people would become husband and wife, loving and unsuspecting. Now he was forcing me to be a concubine. Was that not going against the Emperor's will? But behind him stood a young and talented general protector of the state, highly valued by His Majesty. Julian dared to humiliate me today simply because he relied on his older brother's power. I cast my eyes toward the person who had been standing silently nearby, Nolan Lin. We happened to lock eyes. In the depths of his eyes it was as dark as the night sky, without a single ripple. He and I used to be close acquaintances, but over time we had grown distant. Today, I could only gamble once. I wondered how much of the friendship from our youth remained in his heart. I looked straight into Nolan Lin's eyes and spoke softly. "Brother Nolan, are you just going to stand there and watch them oppress me?" Nolan curled his lips into a smile, but that smile was cold and heartless. "You are my younger sister, but Julian is also my younger brother. How do you want me to help?" Brothers could not show favoritism. I gritted my teeth, my gaze determined. "Then what about husband and wife?" The words slipped out of my mouth, my heart beat like a war drum. "Brother Nolan, I do not want to marry anyone else, so..." The entire hall immediately fell into a fearful silence. I involuntarily held my breath, waiting for an answer. Suddenly, Julian burst out laughing. "Clara, are you crazy? You want to marry my older brother just to spite me because you love me to madness? Are you worthy?" I did not care about his mockery. My eyes only followed one person. "Agreed." A simple word caused the whole hall to explode. Julian's face hardened, unable to believe his ears. "What did you say?" "Clara is already my wife. It is an engagement between our two families." Nolan calmly took my hand and stood close to me, his voice steady. "I will report this matter to His Majesty myself. From now on, Clara is my wife. You are not allowed to call her by her name casually anymore." I breathed a sigh of relief, only then realizing that my palms were soaked with sweat. Just then, old Madame Lin, counting Buddhist beads in her hand, walked out from the inner hall. Her demeanor was calm, her voice placid. "One should not act too hastily. I have taken refuge in Buddhism for many years and did not want to interfere in such matters. But now, Miss Gu has an engagement with Julian, yet wants to marry Nolan. If outsiders find out, what will become of the Lin family's reputation?" Saying this, she paused for a moment and then slowly continued. "When it comes down to it, this is also the Lin family's fault for not clarifying things with the Gu family from the beginning. Why don't each side take a step back? We will make Miss Gu a noble concubine. If she gives birth to the eldest son later, she can be promoted to the position of equal wife." Hearing that, Julian's face also softened as if he had accepted the compromise. Julian reached out to pull me towards him, his voice full of feigned lingering affection. "Clara, we have been together for so many years, how can we just let go of this affection? Rest assured, I will definitely not treat you poorly in the future. You can have as many children as you want." His words and that mother and son pair's calculations were truly too perfect. The only thing missing was throwing the abacus right in my face. They wanted my dowry but did not want me to occupy the position of the first wife, using sweet words to paint a ridiculous dream. This pie in the sky had been left for 3 years, it was long and moldy. Fury rose to the top of my head. I gritted my teeth, flung his hand away, and spoke coldly. "Whoever wants to marry can go ahead. I have long since stopped liking you. The person I like is your older brother. If I must marry, I will only marry him." Nolan raised his eyebrows slightly, his eyes holding a deep meaning as he slowly spoke. "Clara, if you desire it so much, why don't we perform the wedding ceremony today?" As soon as he finished speaking, the servants brought out 2 brand new sets of wedding robes from who knows where. I put them on, and they fit as if they had been made to measure. In a daze, I was held by his hand as we completed the wedding ceremony together. When I came back to my senses, I had followed him to his mother. He respectfully offered tea. Mother took it with trembling hands, her voice tense as she faced the general of the state. Today I hand my daughter over to you. But if anyone dares to bully her in the future, even if I have to risk this old life, I will definitely take her back. Facing that warning, the usually majestic general responded very seriously. Mother, rest assured, Nolan swears that I will never let her suffer any grievance. A sharp voice rang out. Nolan, I am not dead yet. How dare you call someone else mother? Old Madame Lin was so angry, she almost dropped the Buddhist beads in her hand, her face full of resentment. What is the rush? Next, shouldn't the bride offer tea to her mother-in-law? Nolan smiled slightly. Just as the old madam raised her hand intending to knock the teacup from my hand, he gripped her wrist tightly, his voice calm. Mother, be careful. The tea being offered cannot be spilled. Without waiting for the old madam to react, he waved his hand to signal the maidservants. Today, the Lin manor has double happiness. The old madam is overly joyful. Help her inside to rest. The old madam was so provoked she trembled all over, unable to utter a word. She was forced to drink the tea and accept the ceremony. Julian finally could not bear it anymore and spoke loudly. Brother, are you going to this extent for this woman? Nolan glanced at him, his deep eyes devoid of emotion. In the blink of an eye, Julian's momentum deflated. He mumbled something unclear and dared not say more. I smiled lightly, looking at his angry, but suppressed appearance, feeling incredibly refreshed. In the Lin manor, General Lin's words were the law. No matter how unwilling they were, they could only endure it in front of him. Although my younger brother-in-law and his wife already had such a big child, today was a day of great joy after all. I also had to give a congratulatory gift. Thinking this, I removed the jade bracelet from my wrist and placed it in that woman's hand, speaking casually. This bracelet was a betrothal gift my younger brother-in-law gave me before. I think it suits you better. Just keep it. She took the jade bracelet, looking embarrassed. She could neither hold it nor throw it away, her face changing colors continuously, looking very spectacular. Just as I was enjoying her unsightly appearance, a low voice rang out. All right, the ceremony is not over yet. Nolan's face darkened. He took my hand and pulled me straight away. The bridal chamber is ready. Come back with me. My heart suddenly hung in suspense. Looking at his appearance right now, did he want to consummate the marriage immediately? I was not ready to marry Nolan yet. It was just a moment of impulsiveness. Who knew things would progress so quickly? My hands clenched, sweat seeping out. But when the important moment actually arrived, I discovered that everything was not as scary as I thought. Nolan was strangely gentle at that time, causing me to quickly sink into it. Last night, the mandarin ducks played in the waves. When I woke up, the pillow beside me was empty. Tilly brought in my clothes to help me change, whispering. The general went to court early. Servants came from outside to report that the old madam is waiting for you to pay respects at the Buddhist hall. Yesterday we were tense with each other. Today she called me there alone. I feared she had no good intentions. If I did not go, I would be labeled as disrespectful to elders, letting outsiders ridicule me. But if I went, I also wanted to see what tricks the old madam would play. A treacherous banquet was already set. I naturally could not retreat. When I arrived, there were only a few simple vegetarian dishes on the table, clearly prepared in advance. As soon as she saw me, Annie immediately flashed a gentle smile and hurriedly stepped forward. Sister-in-law, come here quickly. I prepared this meal with my own hands. Taste it and see if it is delicious. The old madam also wore a benevolent expression, showing no intention of making things difficult. There was no scene of closing the door to intimidate me, nor was there any demand to kneel for punishment. But clearly, this was a feast at Hong Gate. Tilly, standing beside me, leaned close to my ear and whispered anxiously. Madam, we should avoid this. Let's wait for the general to return to the manor before making plans. I smiled faintly and replied in a low voice. No. If I wait for him to return, how will I see this good show? Saying that, I calmly sat down. Annie diligently picked food for me. But before I finished eating, the old madam could not help but speak up. Now we are all one family. I consider the past matters with Julian as water under the bridge. From now on, everyone must work together to build this family. That is right. Annie smiled sweetly, her eyes brightening. I heard that my sister-in-law brought quite a dowry when entering the family. Those things now also belong to the Lin manor. Sister-in-law should also contribute to help inside and outside the household. Contribute to the Lin manor. I laughed softly, my eyes cold, my voice sharp. I think you mean contributing to Julian. The atmosphere in the room suddenly became tense. I curled my lips, not dodging at all but pointing straight to the issue. Just entered the door and you are already eyeing my betrothal gifts. Is the Lin manor so destitute that it cannot manage? Insolent. The old madam suddenly slammed the table, her face darkening, her eyes full of threat. You have entered the family, so this wealth naturally belongs to the Lin family. How can you keep holding on to it? Before I could reply, Annie stumbled, her eyes teary, her tone pitiful. Julian thought that you would marry him. Annie sighed, her voice full of resentment. Julian originally thought you would marry him, so he never held back on expenses. Unexpectedly, in the end, it was you who betrayed his trust. Now he is in debt. Are you truly cruel enough not to help repay it, wanting to force us to a dead end? So, Julian had long considered my dowry as something in his pocket, just waiting to take it. I could not help but laugh as I listened, as if I had just heard an absurd story. I curled my lips, my voice calm. Those betrothal gifts now belong to my husband. If you want to take them, wait for him to return and ask him directly. The old madam raised her eyebrows, her tone high and mighty. He is Julian's older brother. I do not believe he would cause discord in the family over a little silver. I did not reply. Although Nolan married me, I still could not determine his heart. People change easily. Even Julian once knelt before the emperor to ask for my hand, yet in the end, he turned his back heartlessly. Seeing my silence, Annie immediately became smug. She waved her hand to signal the servants to enter my room, intending to take the betrothal gifts away. Two maids held me tight, making me unable to move. I could only watch helplessly as the chest of jewels was opened. Annie rummaged through each piece of jewelry, her eyes shining as if seeing treasure. She picked up a gold hairpin, held it to her hair, and laughed scornfully. My sister-in-law kept so many good things but refused to bring them out. Now in the end they are mine. I shouted in anger. That is the dowry my father spent years preparing for me before I married. The old madam snorted coldly. Yours. Is your name carved on it? Actually, there is. I laughed coldly, my eyes full of contempt. My father, fearing I would suffer grievances, specially ordered each piece of jewelry. Inside every piece, the two words Clarigu are carved. Hearing this, Annie's face immediately turned pale, but she stubbornly held onto the gold hairpin, refusing to let go. Even if we cannot use them, at worst we can sell them and exchange them for something else. Who cares if your name is carved on them? I smiled faintly, my eyes full of mockery. Without the order of the Gu family, let me see which merchant in this city dares to accept them. Her face changed from horror to bitterness, a vicious glint flashing in her eyes. Annie, furious, aggressively threw the gold hairpin to the ground. Your Gu family has immense wealth. Surely you still have plenty of silver in hand. Hand over all the shops and properties immediately. I looked at the hairpin that my father had spent so much effort preparing for me, now broken right before my eyes. A wave of grief and indignation rose in my heart. Refused to hand it over. The old madam snorted coldly, signaling the servants to bring a rod. Beat her until she agrees to hand it over. A wooden rod as thick as a wrist swung in mid-air, bringing with it a whistling wind. Several maids held me down, kneeling on the cold floor, unable to move. Seeing the inheritance left by my father being trampled upon, I grew even more resentful. Despite the pain, I could not yield. Clenching my teeth, I tried to support myself, receiving each blow that rained down. A rod struck my back, causing a burning, stinging pain. Before I could catch my breath, a second rod struck down. Stop! A low but majestic voice rang out, carrying anger surging like a storm before a heavy rain. The maids holding me down immediately let go. My body went limp, almost falling. A pair of steady arms embraced me, every movement careful. Nolan lifted my chin, looking at my pale face drained of blood. Just then, a tear silently fell, landing straight into his palm. He flinched as if burned, slightly withdrawing his hand, then gently placed me on the soft chair. Immediately after, his eyes turned cold as ice, sweeping across the hall. Who did this? His voice was like a sharp blade sweeping through everyone. Annie immediately fell to her knees, but the old madam quickly supported her, speaking calmly. Nolan, what are you doing? It is just a small matter in the inner courtyard. Is it worth getting angry over? Nolan was silent for a moment, then suddenly burst out laughing. Mother is right. I felt a chill spread through my heart, but before I could understand his meaning, I heard the next sentence. Then what follows is a matter for us men. Mother, please step aside. As soon as he finished speaking, he waved his hand to signal the servants. Immediately, a group of servants brought over rods that were even thicker and rougher. Julian was pinned to the ground. He screamed in panic, his voice trembling. Do not, brother. Do not beat me. I cannot take it. But Nolan did not even bother to glance at him. He simply spoke in a cold voice. Whoever did it shall bear the punishment. Only when the rod struck down for the first time did Julian realize what was happening. The heavy rod landed, immediately causing his flesh to split open, blood soaking through his layers of clothing. Old Madame Lin and Annie were both stunned. After a long while, they finally snapped out of it, and hurriedly rushed forward to stop it, but they were held back by the servants. Nolan looked down at the person kneeling prostrate on the ground, his voice cold as ice. Since you do not know how to manage the inner courtyard and even condone your wife acting recklessly, then keep beating him until my wife's anger subsides. The sound of the rod striking down heavily rang out with every beat. Each blow brought forth a painful moan from Julian. At first, he could still scream miserably, but eventually, he could not even utter a moan. The old madam was so terrified she fainted on the spot. Annie still tried to crawl in front of me, her trembling hands grasping the hem of my skirt, her voice begging miserably. Sister-in-law, please ask Big Brother to spare him. I looked at her pale face, her forehead covered in sweat. Suddenly I felt incredibly refreshed in my heart. Picking up the broken gold hairpin, I gently lifted her chin and spoke calmly. Spare him. Then you will take the punishment in his stead. The sharp point of the hairpin touched Annie's soft skin. She trembled in fear, her whole body shaking. But no matter how she cried and begged, if I did not speak up, Nolan would not stop. She clenched her fists tightly, bit her lip, and slapped her own face, her voice trembling. It is my fault. It is all because I coveted my sister-in-law's betrothal gifts. I was disrespectful to my sister-in-law. Julian knew nothing about it. Please, for the sake of old times, tell Big Brother to stop. Her crying mixed with the sound of rods striking Julian's body echoed throughout the hall. I enjoyed the scene before my eyes, and the pain on my back seemed to alleviate somewhat. I deliberately pretended to think for a long time, looking at Annie's increasingly swollen face and her pleading eyes. Julian was almost at his limit. Finally, I slowly pulled lightly on Nolan's sleeve. He still maintained a dark expression, his voice cold. Stop. If he dies, he deserves it. I smiled softly, speaking gently but clearly. After all, he is your biological younger brother. I do not want you to bear the reputation of killing your own kin. Hearing this, a sharp glint flashed in Nolan's eyes, but in the end, he still waved his hand to signal them to stop. Nolan shouted coldly. Useless bunch, withdraw. The servants immediately bowed and retreated, leaving Julian prostrate on the ground, his breathing ragged. There was not a single intact spot left on his back. Blood and flesh were muddled together, and his clothes were dyed red, looking incredibly tragic. Old Madame Lin, having just woken up and seeing this scene, panicked and rushed over to hug him, crying bitterly. My son. My Julian. But Nolan only indifferently waved his hand, ordering servants to take him down for treatment, then turned to support the old madam to stand up. His face, when not smiling, carried a cold and murderous aura that made others dare not approach. The old madam raised her hand, intending to land a slap, but stopped in mid-air, not knowing what to do. He did not give her a chance to resist, forcefully helping her stand straight, his voice echoing through the main hall. Clara is my wife. Husband and wife are one. From now on, if anyone dares to hurt her, it will absolutely not be as simple as today. Saying this, his gaze swept around once, finally stopping on Annie. She trembled, her face swollen and red, tears streaming down. She hurriedly knelt down, stammering. Thank you, Big Brother, for sparing my life. Thank you, sister-in-law, for sparing my life. Old Madame Lin was so angry her eyes rolled back, and she fainted once again. I could not help but curl my lips into a smile, my tone light and teasing. General Lin, is it really all right for you to scare your biological mother and younger siblings like that? But being protected like this felt truly good. An unprecedented sense of peace rose in my heart because, in front of everyone, he did not hesitate to stand on my side. From now on, I would no longer have to worry while living in the Lin manor. He glanced at me, his eyes holding a look of reproach. What are you smiling at? I giggled. Today I suffered so many grievances. If you do not comfort me, that is fine. But you are even scolding me. Saying that, I burrowed into his embrace and angrily bit his solid shoulder. His muscles were too hard, my teeth hurt from biting, making me feel even more aggrieved. Nolan frowned, gently patting my back, his voice low. Truly sharp teeth. But you only know how to use them to bite me. Why did you not know how to resist when bullied by others? Was it not because I was respecting the fact that they are your relatives? I immediately retorted, my eyes wide looking at him. He narrowed his eyes, his voice low and full of danger. Are you afraid of me getting angry, or afraid of something else? I was startled, my spine suddenly turning cold. I hurriedly flattered him. I am afraid you will not want me anymore. If by chance you get angry and abandon me, where would I go to find such a good husband like you? He chuckled softly, shaking his head. Smooth talker. Saying that, he picked me up and placed me on the bed. He took out an ointment and intended to remove my clothes to apply it. I hurriedly held my clothes tight, shaking my head vigorously. Let me do it myself. As soon as I finished speaking, my hands were held tight by him. His warm breath brushed against my ear. If you do not want me to get angry, then be good. My ears twitched, and I felt my face surely flushing red. I buried my face in the blanket, not resisting anymore, letting his hands coated with ointment slowly apply it to each wound. His movements were very light, slowly rubbing in circles, making me unable to help recalling the events of last night. I hurriedly shook my head, trying to dispel the messy images in my mind. After applying the medicine, he stood up and ordered the servants to reorganize my betrothal gifts. I lay on the bed watching his figure. The light from the window shone in, highlighting the contours of his resolute face and his calm, solemn temperament. Every sentence carried weight, making people trust him. He suddenly noticed my gaze and tilted his head slightly, his voice softening a bit. What is it? Looking at the chests of betrothal gifts being organized, I suddenly understood my father's intentions better. The Gu family's immense wealth was a solid backing for me when stepping into the Lin manor. Nolan protected me, this was the support helping me stand firm in this place. But my father once taught me, Clara, no matter how much support you have, it is not as good as having enough strength to be your own support. Outside, the world laughed, saying the Gu family built such a huge business, but had no son to inherit it. Father had spent his life in commerce, passing all his experience down to me. With these things, no matter what circumstances I was in, I could live well. I slowly walked over to Nolan and gently pulled his sleeve, looking up at him. Husband, can you let me use a part of the betrothal gifts for business? I am very good at doing business. I can definitely earn a lot of silver. His deep eyes fell on my face, carrying a hint of displeasure. My heart tightened slightly. I felt guilty, thinking perhaps he thought my going out to do business would affect the Lin manor's reputation. I hurriedly opened my mouth to explain, but before I could speak, I was interrupted by him. What did you just call me? I froze, then realized I had unconsciously called him brother earlier. My face immediately turned red, and I lowered my head, whispering, "Husband." Hearing that, he chuckled softly, reached out to rub my head, then lifted me up and placed me back on the bed. Does your back not hurt anymore? Running around just after applying medicine. My hands were held tight in his large palms, a warm feeling spreading through my heart. He bent down, his warm voice ringing above my head. The betrothal gifts were originally yours. You can do whatever you want. A heavy key was placed in my hand. His voice continued. Consider this my early investment in you. The silver I have saved after years of campaigning is all here. I looked up at him. His eyes were deep like a bottomless lake. In a moment of impulsiveness, I reached out and kissed his lips. Just as I was about to pull back, I was held tight by him. His hot breath entangled me, prolonging the kiss. At that moment, I suddenly felt that perhaps we truly were like a loving husband and wife. Nolan treated me too much like a husband doting on his wife, making me unable to resist wanting to ask him, "Have you started to like me?" But I vaguely felt that if I actually asked, he would be angry. The betrothal gifts and the Lin manor's private treasury were all in my hands. I used that silver to buy many shops. Relying on the experience father taught me, along with mother's support in sending old managers and merchants from the Gu family. Soon the shops bearing the name Gu spread across the capital. I looked at the delicate plate of pastries beside me with no interest, waving my hand to tell the maid to take it away. Do not disturb me while I look at the account books. Nolan frowned, picked up a piece of lotus pastry, and brought it to me. You have not eaten much. Eat a little to line your stomach. As soon as I smelled it, I frowned, my stomach suddenly churning, almost vomiting. He immediately called for someone to invite a doctor, his eyes full of worry. What is wrong? Are you feeling unwell? I shook my head, covered my mouth, and pushed the plate of pastries toward the little nephew playing with crickets nearby. Give it to the boy to eat. This child was usually pampered by his parents like a pearl, yet today, for some reason, he secretly ran to find me and kept lingering around without leaving. I found it strange, but thought he was just a child, so I did not pay much attention. I turned around to continue reading the account books, but before I could focus, the book was snatched away by Nolan. Go out for a walk. Do not just stay cooped up in the house. I had no energy to argue, too lazy to even retort, just listlessly letting him pull me along. But just then, the little nephew who had been trailing behind Sutmi rushed at me with force. His whole body threw itself at me. Caught off guard, I lost my balance, my entire body tilting backward straight toward the high stone steps. Before my eyes, the scenery retreated rapidly. I instinctively shut my eyes tight, preparing to receive the pain. But the pain did not come. Instead, behind me was a warm embrace. A pair of steady arms held my shoulders tight. I opened my eyes in panic, turning my head to meet Nolan's deep gaze. Are you alright? He asked softly, his tone steady but carrying a hint of urgency. I was about to reply when I realized that in the moment I was pushed, he had rushed over to catch me, using his own body as a cushion so I would not be injured. I hurriedly tried to get up to check Nolan's injuries, but he held me tight, not letting me move. His eyes were cold and sharp, sweeping toward the steps where his little nephew was standing. I did not understand why such a small child would push me down. Could it just be an accident? I softened my voice to comfort him. Henry, do not be afraid. I am fine. I reached out to pat the boy's head, but before I could touch him, he screamed in anger and slapped my hand away. Do not touch me, you slut. My palm stung. My whole body froze. The child in front of me glared at me, his voice full of hatred. Why haven't you died yet? It is all your fault. You are about to give birth to a bastard child to steal everything from me. He spoke while gritting his teeth, his red eyes fixed on my stomach. I looked at the boy in horror, my voice hoarse. Who taught you to say these words? Nolan took a step forward, facing the boy. His eyes were as dark as an abyss. Under his imposing aura, Henry stepped back in fear and fell to the ground, but still refused to yield. Father and mother both said so. My heart was shaken. Henry continued to scream, tears overflowing, but his tone remained vicious. You have not been eating lately and keep wanting to vomit. Is it not because there is a bastard child in your belly? His words were like thunder in my ears. I unconsciously placed my hand on my belly, recalling my unusual symptoms recently. Could it be that a small life was truly forming inside me? Would Nolan be happy knowing this? I was bewildered, my nerves suddenly taut. If I really was pregnant, did the fall just now hurt the baby? Just then, a loud slap shattered the silence. I looked up to see Henry holding his cheek, his eyes filled with panic and disbelief, his whole body trembling. Nolan's voice was as cold as ice. If your father and mother did not teach you, then I will. He looked at the boy, his eyes sharp as blades. If you dare to speak like that again in the future, I will beat you every time I see you. Finishing his sentence, he immediately turned to call for a doctor. While waiting, he carefully placed his hand on my abdomen. His large hand trembled slightly, his voice low but revealing clear tension. Did your stomach hurt when you fell just now? He paused for a moment, then continued to ask, his voice becoming even more urgent. Have you felt anything strange lately? The hand that once commanded thousands of troops was now trembling when touching me. I could not help but laugh, the complex feelings in my heart easing significantly. I do not feel anything. Then what if there really is one? Nolan looked at me, his eyes softening. His warm hand gently rubbed my head, his voice steady. Then give birth to it. I will protect this child as it grows up with you. That promise warmed my heart, but before I could respond, a shrill scream rang out. You are not allowed to give birth to it. The little nephew suddenly jumped up, his voice full of indignation. The entire manor will be mine in the future. You are not allowed to snatch it. His eyes were full of resentment, staring intensely at my stomach. You fell like that. Surely the baby in your belly is dead too. My mother said a pregnant woman only needs to fall once and the child will be lost immediately. That sentence pierced my heart like a knife. Calculating the time, if the baby in my belly truly existed, it must be very small. Could it be saved? My hands clenched tight, a feeling of insecurity overflowing. Nolan suddenly grasped my hand tightly. His sharp eyes were like swords, his whole body emitting a heavy pressure like an approaching storm. The child opposite immediately trembled in fear, shutting his mouth and daring not say another word. He did not bother with the brat anymore, simply waving his hand coldly to summon his parents. A moment later, the boy's parents hurriedly ran over. Henry now stood timidly in a corner, not daring to open his mouth. Nolan and I remained silent, waiting for the doctor to take my pulse. As soon as she entered the door, Anne kneeled and knelt down, begging. "Big brother, please spare Henry. He is still small. If he made a mistake, it was unintentional." "That is right, brother." Julian also spoke up, his tone light. "It is just a small matter. Why be so petty with a child? After all, you and sister-in-law will have more children in the future." Before I could react, Nolan looked him coldly, his voice carrying a murderous intent. "Who said she is pregnant?" Julian was immediately struck dumb, a flash of panic in his eyes. It is because lately, sister-in-law seems similar to when Annie was pregnant with Henry," Henry said. Speaking to this point, he suddenly stuttered, feeling guilty and not daring to look straight ahead. "So you told Henry to push her down the steps, did you not?" Nolan's voice was cold enough to make people shiver. Julian hurriedly lowered his head, not daring to answer. But at this moment, no answer was needed, everything was clear. Nolan spoke coldly, his sharp gaze sweeping past, causing Julian to reflexively shrink back. His spine felt a dull ache spreading. Seemingly the lingering effect from the previous beating had not yet ceased. He hurriedly raised his hand to swear. "How could I do such a thing? It was just Henry who carelessly bumped into sister-in-law. Why blame it all on me?" Nolan replied indifferently. "If it is truly Henry's fault, then lock him in the ancestral hall to reflect on himself for a few days. That would be good." "I do not want to go to the ancestral hall." The child who had been holding back until finally burst into tears and screamed. "Clearly, it was father who taught me to do it." As soon as these words were uttered, the entire hall fell silent. "Father said as long as I pushed that woman down the steps, everything in this manor would belong to us." "Shut up." Julian furiously kicked the boy, knocking him to the ground. But as soon as he looked up and saw Nolan's face, he immediately broke out in a cold sweat. Brother, do not believe this kid's nonsense." He tried desperately to justify himself, his voice trembling. "How could I? You must believe me." Nolan smiled, but that smile made people even more afraid. "You are right. A spoiled child is due to a father who does not know how to teach," he replied flatly. "Henry is just a child, so you will take the punishment for this crime in his place." Julian turned pale, looking at me in panic, hurriedly begging. "Sister-in-law, you surely do not have the heart to watch me be beaten, right? Quickly beg big brother to spare me." After speaking, he knelt down, his face messy, pleading. At this moment, my mind was still worried about the child in my belly. I did not bother to glance at him, indifferently waiting for the doctor's result. As soon as the doctor withdrew his hand, "How is the child in my belly?" But before receiving an answer, a frivolous voice rang out, "Truly thick-skinned." "What child?" The doctor stroked his beard leisurely and slowly replied. "The madam is merely suffering from indigestion due to the hot weather, adding a few symptoms of nausea, that is all. Just nursing her health for a few days will cure it." The atmosphere in the room suddenly became strangely silent. I slowly placed my hand on my stomach, suddenly feeling an indescribable emptiness in my heart. Nolan stepped forward and gently embraced me, his gentle voice ringing in my ear. "It is all right, it is good that you are safe. Wanting children does not need to be rushed in a day or two." He spoke as if I was the one being impatient. I glared at him. Before I could open my mouth, I heard Julian's scream of terror and disbelief. "No child, how can that be?" He immediately pulled Annie, his tone urgent. "Clearly you checked and said she was definitely pregnant. That is why I rushed." Annie, who was holding Henry, was pulled so hard by him that she stumbled, causing the child to fall to the ground and cry loudly. "Have you had enough yet?" Nolan's low voice rang out, heavy pressure covering the space. I finally felt my mares were a bit cleaner. Julian seemed to suddenly wake up, immediately kneeling at my feet, frantically begging. "Sister-in-law, please, for the sake of our past years, save my life. For the sake of our many years of affection." I frowned, my eyes full of disgust, stepping back 2 paces. "It is the affection of someone who once forced me to be a concubine. I advise you to speak less, perhaps you will receive a lighter beating." Nolan spoke indifferently, then hugged me and turned to leave. "Madame was frightened today, go back and rest early. Leave the rest to me." Behind us, Julian's miserable wailing rang out, only fading away after a long time. After finishing reading the last few account books, the little maid happily ran in to report the news. Young Master Julian had his leg broken this time and was dragged out of the manor like a dog. I casually grabbed a handful of gold coins to reward her. Looking up, I saw Nolan walking in. in such high spirits today. He leaned down, his breath brushing lightly against my ear, but his tone remained very serious. Wait until the court affairs are temporarily settled. I intend to separate the households. I paused, stunned by this news. In the future, we will live our own lives. He stroked my hair gently and continued. When this news spreads, Julian's creditors will certainly not sit still. At that time, he might come looking for you. You must be careful. A silent joy spread in my heart, separating the households. The life hereafter would contain only Nolan and me. Just thinking about it felt satisfying beyond comparison. As for Julian, what did I have to fear? In front of Nolan, he was no different from a puppy whose fangs had been pulled out. What could he possibly do to me? In high spirits, I could not resist turning around and placing a light kiss on his cheek. Nolan's eyes suddenly changed. He lowered his head, his cool lips lightly grazing my neck, bringing waves of tremors. What is it? I panicked and wanted to retreat, but he held the back of my neck firmly, making me unable to move. His gaze slowly moved down, finally stopping on my lips with deep meaning. You tell me. My face immediately flushed red, my heart pounding. My whole body felt hot and uncomfortable. You want to kiss me? He chuckled softly, retreating slightly, then took my hand and gently placed it on his neck, pulling me closer bit by bit, finally stopping at a distance just close enough to touch. He asked me, his voice low like wine aged for many years. My wife, I want to kiss you. Do you agree? I twisted and dodged, wanting to escape the hand causing chaos at my waist, but my whole body had gone limp. Finally, I could only utter a soft murmur of agreement. He pressed his body down, our breaths intertwining. I immediately became flustered. As soon as Nolan's hand touched the lapel of my clothes, I fiercely bit the tip of my tongue, instantly sobbing up. Taking a deep breath, I blocked his hand, my voice trembling slightly. No, your wound. He paused, allowing me to lift his shirt. I saw a large bruise on his shoulder. This was caused when he cushioned my fall down the steps earlier. The mottled wound looked incredibly glaring. I carefully used my fingertips to rub the wound gently, feeling the area gradually heating up. Does it hurt? Nolan seemed to be enduring something. He reached out to cover my hand, his other hand holding me as I sat on his lap. Do not move. I thought he was in pain, so I immediately obediently curled up in his arms. But it seemed he's in even more pain. The arm around my waist tightened. Only then did I react, trying to struggle a bit. But before evening came, the rest of my words were swallowed whole by Nolan. When I woke up, it was already noon the next day. My whole body ached and felt powerless, my legs soft. Being the wife of a great general was truly not easy. For the next few days, whenever there was a chance, Nolan would come to cling to me. Finally, waiting until he was busy with official business, I had the opportunity to go out and inspect the newly opened shop. Just as I sat down with the shopkeeper to discuss for a short while, a commotion suddenly came from outside. Let me see who dares to hit me. Do you know who the commander of the West Pacifying Army, Nolan, is? He is my older brother. Help, help, stop beating me. I walked out and saw a limping figure being beaten while holding his head and begging. His appearance was wretched to the point of being laughable. Who else could it be but Julian? Someone recognized him and did not bother to hide their disdain, speaking to those around. I heard he repeatedly plotted against his own sister-in-law and is about to be kicked out of the house. Yet he still dares to borrow General Lin's name. Assuming no one knew, Julian likely spotted me and immediately rolled into my shop. He shouted triumphantly at those chasing him outside the door. This is my sister-in-law's shop. If you have the ability, come in. I waved my hand, intending to order someone to drag this scoundrel out. Unexpectedly, he hugged my leg tightly, crying and begging. Before I was foolish, my mind was clouded. It is all my fault. I know I was wrong. Please, sister-in-law, save me this time. He looked at me with certainty, as if believing I would definitely lend a hand to help him. Get out. I scolded coldly, unceremoniously kicking him away. Unfortunately, just because of the time spent wrestling with him, the crowd outside feared Nolan, so they dared not continue the disturbance. At this moment, those chasing him outside had dispersed, allowing him to escape by a hair's breadth. A wave of discomfort rose in my heart. I immediately waved my hand to signal people to chase him away. Julian dusted off his clothes, stumbled to his feet, pushed away the shopkeepers blocking him, and spoke arrogantly. Do you know who I am? I almost became your master. Is that so? A steady voice rang out from the door. Julian turned his head, his face instantly turning pale. It was all nonsense, I spouted. I am leaving right now. Nolan suddenly appeared here, surprising me. Lately, he had been so busy with official duties that his feet barely touched the ground, yet he still remembered me, wanted to visit the new shop, and even took the time to go with me. My heart suddenly warmed. I took the initiative to hold his hand. "Husband, you are here." But he took a step back, leaving my hand suspended in mid-air. His low voice rang out, reluctant to part. I was stunned, not understanding what he was saying. His face showed no expression, but a flash of loneliness passed through his eyes. His gaze stopped at my hand still raised in the air. "You still have lingering feelings for him. If you want to chase after him, then go ahead." I was stuck between laughter and tears, guessing that he stood outside, did not see the situation clearly, and misunderstood that I was helping Julian escape his debts. Unexpectedly, the great General Lin, whose name shook the world, also had a day of eating sour vinegar. Looking at his face pretending nothing was wrong, but actually heartbroken inside, I could not help but laugh out loud. But immediately after, I hurriedly retracted my smile, wanting to explain. Regrettably, Nolan had already flicked his sleeves and left. I confusedly chased after him. Just as I reached the street corner, suddenly a hand reached out and pulled me into a small alley. "Shh. It is me." Julian's unlucky face appeared right in front of me. I knew he would follow. His heart still could not let me go. Julian's eyes shone brightly, his hand tightly covering my mouth, preventing me from speaking. I could not open my mouth, only able to use my limbs to struggle desperately, but he still refused to let go. "Clara, you are my benefactor. I am at a dead end now. Only you can help me." He looked at me with pleading eyes, yet carrying a hint of madness. "Just help me this one time. After succeeding, I will definitely make you my first wife." Who cares about being his first wife? I rolled my eyes but also wanted to hear what plot he had. If it affected Nolan, I could take precautions early. Seeing I stopped struggling, he smugly let go of my hand. "I knew you still yearned for this position. Rest assured, in the future, I will absolutely not treat you poorly," I asked coldly. "What do you want me to help with?" He immediately became mysterious, taking out a small cloth bag from his shirt. "Every day, you just need to put this into Nolan's food and soup. This medicine acts slowly, colorless and tasteless. Absolutely no one will discover it. Wait until he dies, then I will marry you. By then, the entire Lin manor will be ours." Fearing I would not be moved, he even tried to act gentle, reaching out to stroke a lock of hair by my cheek. "Clara, rest assured, I do not detest that you were once married to another. There has always been a place for you in my heart. Wait for me to inherit the title and property of the Lin manor. The two of us can be together forever." I smiled slightly, gently reaching out to accept the cloth bag. Julian immediately beamed, calling my name full of affection. "Clara, Clara, I suddenly realized the person I love most is you." He excitedly lunged forward, wanting to kiss me. I pushed him straight away, raised my eyebrows, and smiled faintly. "Do not be rash." Gently putting away the cloth bag, I turned to leave, leaving only one last sentence. "Be good, my obedient younger brother. If you do not leave, you will be discovered by your older brother. You should go back and look after your wife first." After finding Nolan, I immediately told him everything. "Just like that, you told me. Are you not afraid I will?" His voice was low, his eyes still unwavering. "Very afraid." I hugged his arm, resting my head on his chest, speaking coquettishly. "Husband, if you want to kill him, do not dirty your own hands." Nolan's eyes flashed with a hint of ruthlessness. He hugged my waist tighter. "That would be too beneficial for him. I intend to first cut off all his expenses. After separating the households, I will kick him out of the manor, making him lose everything, then slowly torture him." I smiled lightly. "You can do whatever you want." His face finally relaxed a bit, but his voice still carried a hint of jealousy. "Truly not heartbroken. Before, you clearly liked him so much. Just now you even protected him." I pouted, blinked, and reached out to playfully touch his chin where a few new stubbles had grown. "It is true I liked him before. It is also true I completely do not care anymore. Just now was also because he was thick-skinned and offered himself up. I hadn't had time to kick him away yet." Nolan laughed, his low laughter making my heart itch. He held me tight, not letting me move. He parted his robe, revealing an old wooden box. I quickly opened it before he could hide it. Inside was a wooden hairpin meticulously carved in the shape of an almond blossom. "What is this?" I curiously picked it up, feeling the wood was not precious, but was polished very exquisitely. Touching it brought a warm, comfortable feeling. Nolan coughed lightly, took the hairpin, and carefully placed it in my hair. "I originally intended to give it to you 8 years ago." Who told you to like Julian back then, so I kept it. I gently stroked the wooden hairpin, a sudden pang of heartache rising within me. Back then, I particularly loved hairpins carved with almond blossoms. I never expected he would meticulously carve a wooden hairpin in that shape and keep it for so many years before giving it to me. Looking at him, an indescribable emotion rose in my heart. So he had loved me for that long. Nolan chuckled softly, gently flicking my forehead, sighing helplessly. Otherwise, did you think I would just casually marry anyone? I suddenly felt a bit guilty, unconsciously raising my hand to cover my forehead. Before, when I did not know his true feelings, I could still face him calmly, viewing this marriage as an arrangement just living day by day together. But now, knowing that waiting and deep affection, a sense of guilt was born in my heart. Looking up, I immediately met his eyes filled with deep affection, deep as autumn lake water, making my heart suddenly heavy. The moment he leaned down closer, I panicked, grabbed the wooden hairpin, turned around and ran away. Since that day, the number of times Nolan came to find me gradually decreased. As for me, I still had not clearly determined my feelings, not knowing how to take the initiative to find him. On the contrary, Julian tried to meet me again and again, but I used excuses to refuse him every time. Indeed, the person one wants to meet cannot be met, while the hateful one keeps clinging relentlessly. Madam, stop sighing. This servant has an interesting story to tell you. The little maid served a cup of tea and whispered about the interesting things happening in Julian's courtyard. The second master and second mistress have been arguing fiercely lately. All night long, there were only sounds of things being smashed. Hearing this, my mood improved significantly, and I listened with interest. Julian was already heavily in debt, and now that Nolan had cut off all his expenses within the manor, their situation was dire. In these circumstances, arguments were only the beginning. Annie's heart was set on jewels and jewelry, but Julian currently had no ability to provide them. Once his gentle and pleasant facade was gone, I feared his life would become even more difficult. It was only a matter of time before Annie became a burden to Julian. When he looked at her, I wondered if he would remember my generous betrothal gifts. This dog show was truly interesting beyond comparison. I gently fingered the plum blossom hairpin in my hair, suddenly hearing a knock on the door. Nolan stood alone at the door, his cool gaze sweeping across the room, his voice deep. The separation of the family will likely take place in the next few days. You should prepare. I lowered my eyes and responded softly. But when I looked up, his figure had already disappeared. It was strange. I originally thought that when this day came, my heart would be filled with joy. But at this moment, the feeling of happiness was not as intense as I had imagined. Instead, there was a slight discomfort at the bottom of my heart. The little maid helped me sit down and anxiously brought me a cup of tea, but I gently waved my hand, ordering the account books of the manor to be brought here. Since we were about to separate, I should check them clearly. Before the account books arrived, the old madam, who had not left the Buddhist hall for a long time, was helped in by a maid. I immediately performed a curtsy and helped her sit down. The old madam's face was full of anger. She slammed her cane heavily on the ground. If I did not come out, this house would be destroyed by you. I took a sip of tea, my eyes indifferent, and spoke softly. I did not expect my daughter-in-law to have such great capability. She glared at me, gritting her teeth. It is inciting Nolan to demand a family separation, isn't it? A family that was peaceful is now being ruined by you to the point of brothers fighting and the household being restless. I smiled faintly and lowered my voice to reply. Mother is right, I was indeed blind back then to choose him. But thankfully, the one I married in the end was Nolan. Old Madame Lin was so angry she almost could not hold her cane steady. I kindly stepped forward to support her, gently reminding her. Mother, be careful. You are old, so you should rest in the Buddhist hall and worry less, lest you drift away from the Buddha's gate. Following Nolan for so long, I had learned quite a lot. Now that I had solid support, I was no longer someone easily bullied like before. The old madam furiously threw her cane to the ground, gritting her teeth. As long as I am here today, I will absolutely not let this family fall apart. If you want to see the account books, only when I die. I only want to check the public funds in the manor, not to the extent of separating the family yet. Why does mother react so violently? It is truly suspicious. I signaled the maid to support her, then picked up the account books myself and spoke leisurely. Mother is here just in time. If there is anything unclear, it is convenient to ask you. The old madam wanted to stop me but was powerless. She could only watch helplessly as I turned each page of the account books. Before long, I discovered anomalies. In the recent records, there were quite a few ambiguous expenses. The total amount of money was not small. The time these expenses began to appear coincided exactly with when Julian was being chased by creditors. I could not believe it and turned to question her. Did you take silver from the manor to pay debts for Julian? Nolan is also your flesh and blood. Why are you always so biased toward Julian? Seeing the matter exposed, the old madam immediately tore off her mask of hypocrisy, her voice filled with indignation. This was originally the silver you owed Julian. If not for wanting to marry you, he would not have fallen into heavy debt. Now that you have married Nolan, do you still want to cut off Julian's livelihood? Truly absurd. I almost crushed the teacup in my hand. It turned out that in all their eyes I was just a debtor, and Julian was the victim whose future I ruined. Old Madame Lin glared at me, her eyes red, gritting her teeth as she scolded. You are a woman with a vicious heart. If you still have any affection for Julian in your heart, then do not. The old madam truly loved her son deeply, which moved others. But I wonder if you know that your good son wanted to poison Nolan. I took a sip of tea, trying to stay calm as I spoke. Hearing this, old Madame Lin trembled, her face turning pale. Impossible. Julian was raised by me. How could he do such a thing? You are definitely lying to me. Those words made my heart completely cold, and I no longer had the patience to linger. Mother cannot place her thoughts in the right place, so it is better to stay in the Buddhist hall with peace of mind. Will you go yourself, or wait for my husband to return and invite you to go? Upon hearing Nolan's name, the old madam immediately seemed to lose her soul and staggered as she was helped out. Before I could sit down and breathe a sigh of relief, a furious shout rang out from outside. In the blink of an eye, Julian rushed straight in, roaring in anger. You never had any intention of following my words, did you? His face was flushed red, his eyes fierce. He had finally understood the truth. I calmly stroked a flower petal, smiling as I asked, "Little brother, is your leg healed? Why are you so impatient?" Julian was so angry he swung his hand and knocked over the pot of plum blossoms on the table, his eyes full of resentment. You definitely said something to Big Brother. If I cannot have it, then it must be destroyed. You are truly a scheming bitch. I was slightly startled by his madness. His face was beet red, his eyes bulging. At first glance, it was truly terrifying. He screamed and raised his hand to hit me. Fortunately, a few servants rushed up in time to hold him back. I did not want to waste words with a madman, so I simply waved my hand to signal them to drag him out. Daring to cause trouble here. Do you want to lose your remaining leg? I paused for a moment, smiling faintly. Oh, and one more thing. Do not forget to return the silver taken from the public funds in the manor. Julian continued to struggle madly and scream. Clara Goo, why can't you let me go? Just you wait. But soon he was dragged out. Only his screams echoed in the space like a mad dog backed into a corner. Julian gritted his teeth in hatred. I raised my eyebrows and responded leisurely. Fine, I will wait. I felt no fear in my heart. Even if he had the courage of the heavens, he could not do anything to me in the Lin manor. If he wants revenge, let him come. Right at that moment, a low voice hiding anger rang out. Who do you want to regret? Nolan walked over and stood in front of me, cutting off Julian's resentful gaze toward me. He opened his mouth as if wanting to say something, but in the end, he only gritted his teeth and turned away in a huff. Nolan looked at me, his eyes deep. He has learned to bite back. Not bad. I was slightly startled, unable to guess the emotion in his eyes. Wasn't this what he always wanted? Why was he not happy when I finally managed to do it? Before I could ask, he looked at me intently and instructed softly. If there is anything you cannot handle, find me. Do not try to do it alone. I unconsciously touched the plum blossom hairpin in my hair, intending to say something, but was interrupted by him. I have no other meaning. Currently, you are my wife, which is also my dignity. A sense of loss rose in my heart. I whispered a response. Oh, then silence. He said nothing more, making me suddenly panic. If I said nothing, would he turn and leave? Thinking of a future where the two of us treated each other only as passing guests, my heart suddenly ached. I did not want that. The moment he intended to leave, my body reacted instinctively. I hurriedly grabbed his sleeve. Husband, actually, I like you too. My voice choked up, my heart beating wildly. From the moment I decided to marry you, I have always liked you. It is just that I did not know you had liked me for so long. I feel my feelings cannot compare to your intentions over the years. As the words were spoken, I suddenly felt my nose sting, tears threatening to spill. I could not control it anymore. My last sentence carried a hint of sobbing. Only then did I realize how deeply I had unconsciously fallen in love with him. I loved him to the point of unable to bear even a little distance. I loved him to the point of only wishing to hold his hand until our hair turned white. Nolan suddenly burst out laughing, his eyes holding a gentleness I had never seen before. I thought it was a fierce little tiger, turns out it is just a silly kitten. He gently raised his hand to remove the hairpin from my hair, carefully re-tying my messy hair. Did you think I did not hear you scolding me for being stupid? I immediately choked on my words. Before my tears could fall, I angrily bit his shoulder. I thought you did not like me before and just wanted to use me to deal with Julian. He did not dodge, letting me bite. His hands still patiently helped me fix my hair. I did not expect that my feelings would make you feel pressured. He sighed, his eyes carrying a look of doting, whispering softly. My wife is truly silly. I was stunned, my heart feeling as if squeezed by someone. I was originally just unrequitedly loving you. You being willing to respond is already my greatest blessing. His fingers brushed through my hair, bringing a tingling sensation that made me shiver. Finally, he pinned the wooden hairpin back into my hair, his low voice ringing by my ear. Do not be afraid, Clara. We still have a lot of time ahead. My tears could finally no longer be held back and spilled over, but were gently wiped away by his fingers. My whole body trembled slightly. I could not help but bury my head in his chest, seeking some warmth. His body stiffened slightly, then he sighed helplessly. Do not move around. Little ancestor, I just helped you fix your hair. I burrowed into his embrace a few more times, looking up. Sure enough, I met his deep eyes carrying a dark and unpredictable look. Realizing the disadvantageous situation, I immediately turned to run, but was quickly pulled back by him. Husband, do not mess up my hair again. I frantically begged, but it was too late. Afterward, the separation of the family happened very quickly. Julian had previously sold almost everything he could to pay off debts, so the portion of the family property in the manor was not much. As for his debt to the royal family, naturally, he had no ability to pay. But Nolan and I originally did not expect anything from him. Compared to his pile of debts outside, the silver in the manor was like a drop of salt in the ocean. Annie and Julian argued more and more fiercely. A few times I met her, her hair was messy, and there were injuries on her face. But these matters no longer had anything to do with me. I just peacefully waited for the moment of official separation. Unexpectedly, before that happened, the emperor summoned me to the palace. Without time to prepare, I could only instruct the maid to secretly find Nolan, hoping he could arrive in time. Arriving at the great hall, the emperor's face was hidden behind a curtain, his expression unclear. Meanwhile, Julian stood by the side, looking at me with hatred. You defied the imperial decree, betrayed the marriage contract, and repeatedly persecuted him to a dead end. Is that correct? Truly a vile person who wrongly accuses others first. I felt cold sweat pouring down my back but still tried to calm myself. As long as I spoke the truth, I believed the emperor would surely make a fair judgment. Thinking this, I straightened my back and spoke clearly. Reporting to your majesty, these are all his one-sided words. What I am about to report, I hope your majesty will investigate. There is absolutely no word of falsehood. Seeing me open my mouth, Julian immediately panicked and wanted to interrupt me, but was stopped by the emperor's wave. You may speak. I showed no fear, standing straight in the center of the great hall, beginning to present each matter clearly. Julian previously had an illegitimate child and forced me from the position of first wife to be a concubine, forcing me to marry the great general. That is the first point. I saw him repeatedly glancing toward the emperor, his appearance panicked, clearly not wanting me to continue reporting. But this time, without the emperor needing to speak, the head eunuch stepped forward and shouted. Do not cause a disturbance before the dragon throne. I glanced at him once. He had also incited his son to plot to harm the child in my belly. That is the second crime. Blood-spitting slanderer. Julian was anxious, his forehead covered in sweat. Disregarding everything, he wanted to block my words, but he was immediately gagged with a cloth by the head eunuch. After that, he plotted to harm his older brother to seize the family property and monopolize his brother's wife. This is the third crime. Just as I finished speaking, a familiar voice rang out with hurried steps entering. Nolan, seeing me safe and sound, saw his eyes calm down. After performing the ceremony, he stood beside me, shoulder to shoulder, facing the emperor together. With him beside me, I immediately felt more at ease. My back also straightened, and my voice became even more resonant. Julian was unfilial to his older brother, unrighteous to his wife. First, he defied the imperial decree, then he deceived the emperor. Crimes piled upon crimes, stains everywhere. I respectfully hope His Majesty will see clearly. My voice was not loud but resolute and strong like thunder in a clear sky. It reflected on Julian's pale face. At this moment, even without investigation, anyone could recognize who was lying. Nolan's hand held mine. The warmth from his palm transmitted to the bottom of my heart. We quietly waited for the final judgment. What is General Lin's opinion? The Emperor spoke but turned his eyes toward Nolan. The gag had been removed. Julian trembled like a leaf in a storm, his legs unstable, clutching the hem of Nolan's robe, his voice pleading. Brother, I am your biological younger brother. Nolan's expression did not waver. Facing the Emperor, he replied in a deep voice. In front of your Majesty, I dare not overstep to judge. He tightened his grip on my hand. I also held his hand back. What my wife has reported is all the truth. Every word my wife said is the truth. Nolan replied in a low voice, looking straight at the Emperor, his face showing no fluctuation. I leave everything for your Majesty to decide. Outwardly, his words seemed impartial, but in reality, he was implicitly standing on my side, affirming that what I had just reported was true. My heart suddenly warmed. Even the solemn atmosphere in the Golden Hall was no longer as scary as before. Very well. The Emperor glanced at our tightly clasped hands and nodded slightly. Julian has an unrighteous mind and treacherous schemes. Because you are a descendant of a meritorious official, I pardon the death penalty, but strip all titles and expel him to his hometown, never to be appointed again. Indeed, it was retribution. Julian broke out in a cold sweat and collapsed to the ground. He thought he could deceive the Emperor to take revenge on me. Who knew he would push himself to a dead end? Excellent. The fame that he had struggled for over 3 years has now dissolved into smoke. Outside, the creditors were also waiting like hungry tigers. I looked at his desperate face and felt delighted. I wondered what his ending would be like. The matter was clear up to this point. The Emperor waved his hand, and the decision was made. My husband and I bowed our heads in gratitude, and then left the palace. Taking this opportunity, we quickly completed the family separation. From now on, Julian and Annie would no longer appear before me to be an eyesore. After the separation, my life gradually became leisurely. Every day, besides checking account books and looking after the shops, I just lingered in the manor enjoying pastries and taking care of flowers and plants, leisurely enjoying the peace. Madam, please eat less. Lately, your belly has grown noticeably rounder, the little maid standing next to me advised worriedly. I knew she meant well, but why couldn't she speak more pleasantly? I thought with dissatisfaction, unconsciously reaching out to touch my belly. It seemed it really had become rounder. I was stunned, thinking for half a day until the doctor, who came every week to take my pulse and condition my body, suddenly stroked his beard and smiled. Congratulations, madam. What? My mind immediately surged with huge waves. Mother sending me off to get married seemed like yesterday, yet now I was about to have a child of my own. Nolan's face suddenly appeared in my mind. If the child was born, he would definitely be a good father. The previous result was no child, now finally there was one. I wanted to personally report this news to him. The little maid hurriedly ordered people to prepare the carriage, intending to take me to the military camp where Nolan was stationed. Unexpectedly, before I could even leave the gate, someone unexpected appeared. Annie, the person I had not seen for a long time, now stood before the door, holding a bundle of luggage in her hand. Her hair was messy, her appearance haggard, seeming to have no mind left to groom herself. Madame Gu, I have divorced Julian. As soon as she saw me, she spoke immediately. I was astonished, feeling it was a bit strange. Given Julian's nature, if he did not gain any benefit, he would definitely not give up easily. Yet this time he agreed. Hearing my question, Annie lifted her hair to reveal skin covered in bruises and scratches oozing blood, looking incredibly tragic. She let her hair down, laughing bitterly. I left Henry to him. I only pray to be able to leave. If I do not leave here, I fear one day I will die at his hands. Remembering the last time Julian intended to harm me, I could not help but feel a bit of pity for her, while also feeling even more fortunate that I did not marry him back then. Annie took a step forward, tightly grabbing my sleeve, her face pale, her voice begging. Madam, please take me out of the capital. I frowned in displeasure, withdrawing my hand. The carriage was ready, just waiting for me to depart. Why did she insist on asking me to take her? I had not forgotten how you all conspired to harm me. Madam. Annie suddenly knelt down, her whole body prostrate on the ground, her clothes stained with dirt. Julian temporarily let me go, but who knows when he will regret it. If he catches me back, I will definitely die a miserable death. Seeing my hesitation, she immediately kowtowed hard. Kind madam, please, just take me out of the city on your way. That would be a great kindness. Annie kowtowed continuously, each knock so hard her forehead bled. My heart moved slightly. After all, it was just taking her a part of the way, considered as accumulating blessings for my unborn child. Thinking this, I signaled for her to get on the carriage. Annie was extremely grateful. After entering the carriage, she obediently withdrew into a corner, daring not make a sound. As for me, all along the way, I was only focused on thinking about what expression Nolan would have when he heard the news of my pregnancy. Suddenly, the carriage swayed violently. Before I could react, I rolled out of the carriage. Instinctively, I hugged my belly tight, trying to protect the child. A cold wind swept past, and the back of my head suddenly felt a sharp, stinging pain. It seemed something had smashed straight into me. Before completely losing consciousness, I vaguely heard Annie's voice whispering to someone. She isn't dead yet, is she? When I opened my eyes, I found myself lying on the cold ground. Surrounding me was an old warehouse. Location unknown. My hands and feet were tied tight. My stomach still had a dull ache. I did not know how the child in my belly was. Neither the coachman nor the little maid were anywhere to be seen. I did not know what had happened. Panic surged like a huge wave wanting to drown me, but I forced myself to calm down. Thinking of Nolan, thinking of the unborn child, I told myself I must be calm. I guessed I was ambushed on the way to Nolan's military camp. It was likely they could not take me far. Perhaps this place was not far from the military camp. Thinking this, I raised my voice to call. Husband. Before long, the warehouse door was pushed open, but the person walking in was not Nolan, but Julian. Behind him were Annie and a few strangers. Among them were a few faces I found familiar. Julian walked over, a gloomy smile on his face, his posture limping. Madame Gu, I once said you would definitely regret it. Do you remember? His appearance was a bit abnormal. I dared not act rashly, only able to observe carefully, waiting for a chance to escape. I turned my eyes toward Annie, my voice full of indignation. Did you not say you wanted to leave the capital? Why are you still associating with him? Are you not afraid he will beat you again? Annie glanced at me, suddenly bursting out laughing. Her eyes were full of mockery. Why should I leave? As long as Nolan hands over all of the Lin family's assets, we will have everything back, even more than before. She stepped forward, actively linking arms with Julian, her eyes clearly showing smugness. The one who should disappear is you. If not for you, Julian would not have fallen into this situation. As long as you die, everything will return to how it was before. My heart felt as if it were squeezed tight. I could not believe what I just heard. They truly wanted to kill me. I gritted my teeth, trying to stay composed. Do you dare touch me? Nolan will definitely not spare you. Julian suddenly laughed maniacally, laughing until tears streamed down. Clara, you are truly naive. By that time, we will have already taken the money from the Gu family and the Lin family and flown far away. He spread his arms wide, looking extremely arrogant. Do you know? My plan has been calculated for a long time. Once caught, not only your business but even Nolan will obediently hand over the money. He continued to laugh, his tone full of madness. After I pay off all debts, the remaining money is enough for me to enjoy for a lifetime. His words were like thunder in a clear sky, making me suddenly remember something. I looked around and realized that among this group of people, there were a few who looked very familiar. Weren't they the ones who stood in front of my shop chasing Julian for debt? I immediately understood everything. Julian had long colluded with the creditors, using my kidnapping to force my family to pay ransom. I gritted my teeth, hating these people to the bone who had completely lost their humanity. If I did not keep calm, I would not be able to protect myself. I must endure. I must wait for an opportunity. Because I still haven't had the chance to tell Nolan that we finally have a child. I must survive. With my mind made up, I no longer resisted fiercely. When they searched my body, I did not resist at all. I took the initiative to tell them I had a hairpin on me. Julian narrowed his eyes at me, his tone full of sarcasm. If you had been obedient like this from the beginning, it would have been fine. From the start, if you had willingly been my concubine, I could have used your dowry to pay debts, and you could have fulfilled your wish to marry me. He licked his lips, a despicable glint flashing in his eyes. Look, isn't it no different now? I hated him so much I wanted to bite to pieces his ridiculous dream. Reaching this point, he still thought I was obsessed with him, loving him in vain. But I could not provoke him. I lowered my head to avoid his gaze and replied softly, "I didn't know." They stripped all the jewelry from my body, arranging each piece in front of me, forcing me to hand over 2 tokens symbolizing my identity. One to send to the chief manager of the Gu family's merchant guild. One to send to Nolan. The intention was to use my name to get silver from both sides. I chose a wooden plum blossom hairpin to give to the manager, and a gold hairpin to give to Nolan. That wooden hairpin was not a Gu family item, but it was something I always carried with me. Seeing it, the manager would definitely be suspicious. As for the gold hairpin, it was the item Annie had intentionally broken before, and Nolan had helped me repair it. Although not too obvious, there were still traces. As long as he saw the gold hairpin, he would know I was in danger. Annie glanced at the hairpin, seeming about to open her mouth to say something. My heart tightened. Did she still remember this hairpin? Wait. Annie suddenly stepped forward, picking up the gold hairpin, a look of greed flashing in her eyes. Change it for another one. This hairpin is both beautiful and precious. It is better to keep it for us to use. I was so scared my heart almost stopped. Fortunately, she was only greedy and did not suspect anything. I deliberately showed hesitation, speaking softly. Changing for another one is fine, just pick any from the rest. However, this gold hairpin was given to me by my husband. If exchanged for something else, I do not know if he will recognize it immediately. Choose this one. Julian did not bother to glance, coldly snatching the gold hairpin, his tone disdainful. Wait until we get the silver. We can have as many of these things as we want. Finally, the 2 pieces of jewelry were taken away under Annie's lingering gaze. I breathed a sigh of relief. I had done my best. The rest was just waiting for Nolan to come save me. But Julian still had no intention of letting go. Waiting until the creditors also left to check the situation, he immediately rushed forward, throwing himself on me, holding me tight. I was disgusted to the extreme, but my hands and feet were tied. I could only desperately retreat backward. But Julian seemed glued to me, his breath full of excitement, his hands beginning to act improperly. Let go of me. I no longer cared about provoking him, shouting and struggling, only wanting to escape him. Julian, with messy hair, suddenly laughed loudly like a madman, his fingertips stroking my face bit by bit. You and your silver originally belonged to me. Now I am just doing what I should have done earlier. He narrowed his eyes, the corners of his mouth lifting into a grotesque smile. Clara, between me and my big brother, who do you love more? The more I struggled, the more excited he became, his laughter growing louder. He completely disregarded my fear. I gritted my teeth and screamed, Julian, you are crazy. You have truly gone crazy. I struggled with all my might, but despair filled my heart. My eyes accidentally swept past and saw someone still standing in the corner of the room. Disregarding everything, I screamed for help. Stop him. I beg you. Annie looked at me. She hesitated for a moment, but in the end, she lowered her head, silently turned and walked away. The warehouse door slammed shut. I fell completely into despair. I was terrified of what Julian was about to do to me, even more worried about the unborn child in the belly of this madman. He wanted to drag me into the abyss, never to recover. My hands and feet were tied tight, but I still used all my strength to headbutt him, use my teeth to bite him, wishing I could bite this person to death. Blood flowed out, but he did not care. On the contrary, he became more excited, tearing my clothes. I cried until my voice was hoarse, trembling as I begged him to stop. My husband will definitely come to save me. If you do this, he will absolutely not forgive you. Julian licked the blood from his lips, laughing wildly. If I don't do it, will he spare me? Keep struggling, my good sister-in-law. His eyes were bloodshot, cold and heartless. My heart ached. He frantically reached out to tear the remaining fabric on my body. The marks of love between my husband and me were clearly revealed before his eyes. His pupils contracted, his face turning vicious. Suddenly he bit down hard on my shoulder, roaring like a wild beast. You should have been my woman. You slut, you dare let him touch you. I struggled miserably, screaming loudly. That person is my husband. It is Nolan. He gritted his teeth, pressing down on my lips, roughly kissing and biting. I was disgusted to the extreme, turning my head to avoid him, tears streaming down. In the midst of despair, I bit my lip tight, crying and calling out, Nolan, come quickly to save me. As if hearing my cry for help, bam, the warehouse door was kicked open. My body suddenly felt light. A coat carrying a familiar scent covered me. Julian was knocked to the ground, just like a broken puppet. He was immediately picked up, receiving ruthless punches and kicks. He struggled, foaming at the mouth, screaming miserably. But Nolan still had not vented his anger. He snorted coldly, landing a kick that sent him flying several meters away. Julian fell completely unconscious. Nolan turned around, immediately hugging my trembling body tight into his embrace. His voice, also trembling, revealed immense pain. "It is all right now. Do not be afraid." Only then did I burst into loud sobs. He clumsily wiped away the tears on my face, but the more he wiped, the more tears fell. "Sorry, I came late." I buried my face in his chest, greedily absorbing the familiar warmth. My heart was both sour and bitter. I had suffered too many grievances. Would he despise me? Before, he misunderstood that I still yearned for Julian. At this moment, witnessing such a scene, what would he think? Would he think that I voluntarily entangled myself with Julian endlessly? The more I thought, the higher the fear in my heart rose. Tears rolled down. My throat was hoarse. I even wanted to hide from his arms, but I did not want him to leave me. "Nolan, can you believe me?" I looked up, trying to keep myself calm to face his eyes. "I never liked Julian. I am innocent. I did nothing wrong. Can you not abandon me?" The thought of being abandoned by him terrified me to the bone. Just thinking about it was enough to make me unable to bear it. I did not expect that I would love him to this extent. The moment waiting for his answer felt as long as a century. I was even more desperate than when pinned down by Julian. But what I received was a bitter laugh. Nolan glared at me, looking as if he wished he could crush me in his hands, as if wanting to step forward and bite me painfully. "Why would I abandon you? Do you take me for a fool? Could I not sense that you like me? Is it not clear enough?" I lowered my head, my voice muffled. "I was just afraid you misunderstood me, then got angry, then heartbroken." He pursed his lips, his face cold but his eyes revealed a hint of grievance. "I trust you, yet you do not trust me. I am not angry because I misunderstood you, but because I hate myself for not protecting you." Nolan's voice was cold, every word etched into my heart. "If you trust me, I will give you an explanation for every grievance you suffered." Looking at him seriously saying these words, I suddenly felt he was a bit cute. A person with an appearance as cold as ice was saying such gentle words. I could not resist standing on tiptoes, reaching out to touch his hair, exchanging it for a kiss light as a feather imprinted on the tear streaks not yet dry on my face. "How did you find me?" I came back to my senses, remembering to ask. Nolan chuckled softly, taking out 2 hairpins from his chest. As expected of my wife, so smart. As soon as I saw the gold hairpin, I knew something was wrong. Immediately after, your manager also came to find me with the wooden hairpin. I immediately sent people to search. Just happened to be nearby when I heard you calling my name. Sure enough, these 2 hairpins played their role. I was a bit smug, blushing from his praise. He suddenly picked me up and placed me on his lap. I panicked and hugged him tight. "Do not cause trouble here. Julian is still there." He froze for a moment, as if just remembering the person lying unconscious on the ground. Half amused, half helpless, he lifted my hair and whispered, "What are you thinking? I just want to help you fix your hair." After tidying up, I touched the wooden hairpin I had lost and then recovered. Feeling very satisfied, I let him hold my hand and lead me out of this place. "So what will happen to Julian?" "I will hand him over to the Court of Judicial Review. Everything will be handled according to the law. I will personally supervise his case. Absolutely no one can interfere." He paused for a moment, then continued indifferently. "Perhaps he will be exiled. Are you not afraid Mother will blame you?" I worried about this all the way, repeatedly asking him. I feared he would bear the reputation of being unfilial and disrespectful. Later, he sat me on the couch, gently applying medicine to every wound where my skin was broken from being bitten. After applying the medicine, he slowly spoke. "It is not that I want to punish him, but that he pushed himself to this step by step. Not only me, but the law also will not tolerate him." The injuries on my body healed after a few days of nursing. The medicine Nolan gave me was truly excellent, not even leaving a single scar. At the same time, the verdict Julian, Annie, and the kidnappers was also announced. Exile for thousands of miles, never allowed to return. I breathed a sigh of relief, then suddenly remembered I seemed to have forgotten something. That's right, the matter of the child. I still hadn't told Nolan. Nolan was not as happy as I imagined. He just calmly handed me a few pastries and a cup of tea. "Are you not happy?" I was both happy and worried. Biting into a soft sweet cake, I found the sour and sweet flavor suited my taste perfectly. The little maid beside me suddenly covered her mouth and giggled. Nolan tilted his head, the corners of his mouth also hinting at a smile. Before I found you, they had already told me. It is just that I did not expect you only remembered to tell me now. No wonder since I returned. Every time we dined, he only ate simply, while my food became increasingly exquisite and complete. People say pregnant women become silly. It was indeed not wrong at all. Nolan shook his head, raising his hand to wipe a crumb from the corner of my mouth. I was just about to open my mouth to accept another piece of cake from his hand when I suddenly felt a cold gaze watching me from behind. Turning my head, I saw my little nephew standing huddled in the corner, staring at us. Henry. As soon as he heard me call, the boy immediately turned and ran away. Soon Henry's figure disappeared. Since his parents were arrested, my husband and I could not bear to leave him alone, so we could only take him in and raise him in the manor. Although he was taught badly before, we still thought the child was young and could be slowly re-educated later. Waiting for the day my child was born, the two could grow up together, reading books and playing. But looking back now, in that child's heart, I feared there was still quite a bit of lingering gloom. I suddenly thought, perhaps tonight I should go to his room and stay with him for a night. Who knows, maybe I could help him open up. When night fell, Henry looked at me with silent eyes, saying not a word, just coldly turning over to sleep. I sighed, telling myself that time was still long. I could teach him slowly. If I couldn't teach him, at least I had fulfilled my benevolence and righteousness toward him, providing food, clothes and books to study. However, before I could close my eyes, I was carried straight back to our room by Nolan. I was both angry and amused, raising my hand to lightly hit his shoulder. You are already so big, why are you still jealous of a child? If I went back now, I would surely wake Henry up, and I did not want to make noise, so I let him be and went to sleep. In my dream, I seemed to hear him frantically calling my name, his voice filled with panic. I woke up only to see a sea of red fire before my eyes. Nolan was holding me tight, standing in an open space, surrounded by thick smoke and towering flames. The direction being burned most severely was exactly where Henry lived. My heart seemed to stop beating. I immediately shouted orders for people to extinguish the fire, but Nolan just tightened his embrace, his voice heavy. It is too late. Amidst the sound of the raging fire, I also heard Henry's miserable screams, vaguely calling someone. At first, I thought he was calling for help or calling his parents. But listening more closely, the words he uttered made my whole body turn cold, shivering uncontrollably. It is all your fault. Burn you to death. Burn you to death. I was stunned, my hands cold. How could a child hate me that much? Impossible. How could this fire start naturally? Nolan's face was solemn, his voice low. I fear he set the fire himself. He wanted to burn you to death, but in the end, he harmed himself. I stood dazed amidst the firestorm, watching the flames grow increasingly intense, hearing the screams and curses gradually weaken, finally completely vanishing into the sea of fire. Suddenly, a figure disregarded everything and rushed into the wind. Her messy hair blew wild, revealing a bruise on her face that hadn't yet faded. It was Annie. When had she escaped? Before I could react, she let out a heart-rending scream. My child. Without hesitation, she rushed straight into the sea of fire. Her frail figure was quickly swallowed by the flames. In the final moment, I heard her voice echoing from the fire. Julian, avenge us. I shuddered, an ominous feeling rising in my heart. Right at that moment from behind a cold light flashed, carrying an oppressive, murderous aura. Clara Gu, even in death I will not forgive you. Julian's voice, full of hatred, rang right by my ear. My whole body froze, my blood seeming to solidify. The dagger in his hand tore through the wind rushing toward me. At that moment, I thought, will I die here today? The sharp blade reflected the firelight, getting closer and closer. I could feel its bone, chilling cold. But right at the moment the blade was about to pierce me, a strong hand reached out and grasped the dagger tightly. I screamed in terror, seeing only Nolan, his face unchanging, his bare hand holding the dagger. Blood flowed his palm unceasingly. Without hesitation, he snatched the weapon from Julian's hand. Then, in the blink of an eye, the cold blade slid across his throat, red blood gushed out, mingling with the glowing red fire. In an instant, I could not distinguish if it was red blood or the fire burning brighter. Julian's distorted face stiffened, then he slowly fell. In those eyes filled with hatred, there remained a trace of regret and unwillingness. Until his last breath, Julian still could not close his eyes. I involuntarily recalled the words Nolan once said. It is not that we did not spare him, but step by step, he pushed himself onto this path. Nolan breathed heavily. His injured hand held me tight, his voice still trembling. It is all right now. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my mind. As I gently removed his hand to examine the wound, I suddenly realized that behind Julian's corpse, a trembling figure was standing there. It was the old madam. Her hands clutched her cane tightly, her eyes fixed on the body of her only remaining son. The heavy cane fell to the ground, accompanied by the sound of choked sobbing. Everything finally came to a close. Outside, the sky had brightened. Nolan exhaled softly, looking at the sky gradually lighting up, and said, "Dawn has broken." A long, arduous night had finally passed. After the fire, the burned houses were repaired one by one. All traces of the past were erased before my child was born. When the baby was born, my mother came to visit often, holding him all day and cooing, to the point of ignoring me. Every time I pouted to show resentment, she would laugh heartily, hugging her grandson away from me, saying, "You already have a husband to love you, I must compensate my grandson." Unable to bear it, I threw myself into Nolan's arms, acting coquettishly and demanding he judge. However, he said nothing, simply lowering his head and biting my ear lightly. Then he calmly picked me up and carried me into the room. He smiled gently and said, "Mother told me to take good care of you. How dare I disobey?" I struggled but couldn't escape, angrily biting him. Unexpectedly, I was kissed back by him. Passing by the Buddhist hall, I vaguely heard the low sound of chanting inside. After this incident, the old madam seemed to have aged a lot. She knelt before the Buddha statue all day, no longer concerning herself with worldly affairs. My shops finally spread throughout the capital. If father were still alive, surely he would proudly praise me, saying I was worthy of being his daughter. From then on, Nolan and I became a couple admired by everyone, enjoying a peaceful life. Just as he once said, "We have a long future ahead." This story illustrates that true dignity lies in the refusal to settle for anything less than total respect. Clara's journey reveals that self-worth is the ultimate shield against betrayal. She did not merely wait for a savior, she became her own stronghold through intelligence and resilience, turning her dowry into an empire. By bravely rejecting a toxic past, she made space for Nolan's enduring, patient love. The profound lesson is that the best revenge is not malice, but living a life of prosperity and peace. When we have the courage to walk away from those who devalue us, destiny rewards us with the happiness we truly deserve. The story ends here for now. If it touched your heart or left you thinking, I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Please like, subscribe, and share Raccoon Tale to help more stories come to life. See you in the next tale.